Welcome to another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today, my guest is Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutritionist and bioenergetic practitioner specializing in supporting clients with chronic and complex illnesses such as Lyme disease, mold toxicity, and autoimmune diseases. With over 32 years of personal experience, she understands the struggles of living with these conditions and is dedicated to helping others find relief. Her personalized approach as a practitioner, podcast host, author, and stand up comedian has helped countless clients reduce inflammation in the body and brain, improve gut health, and achieve optimal wellness. She helps her clients get to the root cause of their symptoms and helps them take control of their health journey. Heather's approach is not only effective, but also empowering. She often says, don't let chronic illness control your life. You can achieve and maintain the health and vitality you deserve. And I agree. So, welcome to the show, Heather.
Woohoo! You're like a sister from a mister. We're both praise.
We are.
I love it.
So tell us, Heather, how did you become the Lyme boss? I like that. Take authority. You're the Lyme boss. So how did you become that?
Yeah, geez, I got to start at the beginning. I was basically born full of shit, right? Like, how many of you and your clientele can relate to being constipated as a young kid? I remember sitting on the potty so long that my feet would fall asleep, and that began my let's throw band-aids at symptoms, thick, nasty oils, laxatives, stool softeners, but nobody was trying to figure out why this 4-year-old couldn't poop. And then, hindsight's 2020. That was the year my uncle committed suicide. My grandmother died of breast cancer, and I was being raised by alcoholic addicts. So I'm pretty sure that kind of clicked on my
Yeah.
celiac gene at the time, right? We were eating a standard American diet, right? The SAD diet. And it just started setting me up to be a good host. That's one thing I always try to bang into people's heads, especially with Lyme disease, is that it's never just a cause and effect. There's something that was in play years, decades before you actually got the thing. It's never, I got bit by a tick and I got Lyme disease. No, I was a perfect host because I had the early childhood trauma. I was living in mold. I had autoimmune that was already triggered, right? So all these things. So when I got bit by a tick when I was 13, I was a perfect host. So I had my first suicide attempt at 15, again at 19, and then it took 27 years of being undiagnosed Lyme disease before, I finally got any answers. So a very long time with just being told that, my labs look normal, right? That it's all in my head, all the things that a lot of us have heard because most of us in this space have a pain to purpose story. That's why we do what we do, right? So that's was kind of mine in a nutshell.
Wow, I didn't expect all that. Okay, and then somehow you so and then somehow you turned comedian.
Yeah.
Through all your struggles, needed a little humor in your life, or how,
That was a
where's the
weird,
connection there? Yeah.
yeah, that was a weird thing this year, actually. I've only been doing it for 5 months, but it's like I've been strapped to a rocket ship. It was obviously something I've been meaning to do because the doors have just been opening up. It's been insane. But I did it because I mean, you might know him from Mindshare. He belongs to Mindshare. Dr. Sam Shea.
I do know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he's on the Asperger's spectrum. He's a doctor and he also does stand up. He lives in Boulder, which is just a town next to me. And we met up one day just to, in real life. And within 5 minutes, he's like, have you ever thought about doing stand up? I said, why on earth would I do that? And he goes, because I know you want to be on more stages. I know you want to do like keynote speaking, stuff like that. He's like, it looks really great on your resume. Actually, he said CV, which I always found a little on the pretentious side. I was like, CV, what the hell is that?
What's that CV?
And he goes, and it teaches you a new skill set. And I'm like, okay, that tracks. And he goes, do you have any trauma in your life? I said, how long do you have for lunch? And that's, kind of all she wrote. I ended up taking the same class that he was taking a couple months later. I graduated in May. In June, I had my first paid gig in front of 200 women. I now tour with a company called Moms Unhinged. Freaking talented. These ladies are so freaking hilarious. But so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I talk about brain inflammation and coffee enemas and, my transgendered son. So I bring a functional approach to the comedy as well. I don't, kind of making fun of myself through the whole thing, but hopefully if I can plant one seed here and there that might spark somebody to go, look in a different direction or, oh, coffee enemas,
Yeah.
what's that? Go home and Google it and be like, huh. So if I can educate, inspire, and entertain, like I know I'm
Yes.
doing my mission on this planet, right?
What you don't know is I secretly want to be a comedian, but I don't have the balls to do it. My husband knows I've always thought I was funny, even though he says I'm really not that funny. We all have our talents, and that's not one of mine. But I think it was high school, maybe. I don't know. That show, Last Comic Standing, was like my favorite show ever. I don't know if you ever watched that, but that was
I didn't because it's funny that
it,
I was never one of these people that aspired. They were like,
it
I want
just
to be a
happened.
comedian. I
Yeah, it just
just
happened.
fell into it. Just like when I was a hairstylist for 15 years. I didn't grow up with playing with the girls' hair and braiding people's hair. Like I just fell into it and I turned out to be good
Yeah.
at it. It was kind of bizarre.
Well,
Um,
let's go there. So, like, how do you use comedy in treatment with your patients, or do you? And like, how does humor heal? Let's go there and then maybe come back to your Lyme journey.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's so much research on how humor heals, whether you want to look at it at mindset, right? People who focus on their outcomes and funny things have got a better chance of recovery than those who do not. Like, there's been lots of studies of people who've gone home with the same terminal cancer, prognosis. And this person went home and watched a bunch of funny stuff and made sure to surround themselves with joy and laughter. This person did not. The other person, didn't get better. The other person
Mm,
did. Like, it releases oxytocin, it releases good hormones, it decreases inflammation. And there's so much inflammation in the body and brain these days from toxins, from, viruses, bacteria, like so many things. And then, for me, it really helps you to be present. Like, I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts of laughter
mm.
is it's really hard to be angry, pissed off, ruminating, not fair, feeling sorry for yourself when you're laughing, right? And it takes you out of the past, takes you out of the future, and it makes you be right here, a present, right? What a gift that is to be present. So there's a lot of research around laughing comedy, and its healing benefits. I had a printout, not of the more technical stuff, and sadly my desk looks like something threw up all over it and I can't find it. But the
That's all
gist
right.
of it is lowering cortisol, lowering the stress hormones,
Yeah.
increasing good feeling um hormones, and lowering inflammation, helping you to be more present. Is kind of
Uh,
the gist of it.
no, I believe it. I will choose a funny movie over a scary movie any day.
Oh,
Sounds like the
amen.
scary movie is jacking up our cortisol and the funny movie is lowering our cortisol. So I've been doing the right thing there. Okay.
Absolutely.
Take me back to Lyme disease. So you got bit by a tick early in life. Did you have a bullseye rash at that time?
I
And
did
to tell
not.
us, make sure you break down for our
Yep.
listeners. You talked a lot about mold on the podcast, and I want to come back to mold because I know you've had mold exposure as well. We haven't talked as much about Lyme disease, so I want to ask so that you can answer this on the show. The question: does everybody who gets Lyme disease, do they all present with a bullseye rash or not, or vice versa? So, tell us about your situation, your tick bite, and tell us your opinion on the bullseye rash.
Yeah. So they say only 30% of people actually present with a bullseye rash. And so if you have a bullseye rash, eureka, yay, you've got Lyme disease. Go to your doctor, get on the freaking right amount of doxy, and you can pretty much take care of it. Then also work on healing your gut, with taking those probiotics. But easy peasy, right? Way better than living with chronic Lyme. Trust me. So for me, I did not develop a bullseye rash. My mom took it out the wrong way, which was with a lighter. And so there,
Mhm.
there, there are right ways and wrong ways to remove a tick. And so yes, I was 13 years old. I was blind as a bat. I'm in the shower after hanging out at the lake all day, and I felt something on my belly, and I didn't know what it was at the time because I was blind. I get out of the shower, put on my glasses, look down, disgusting, freaking out. And my mom takes a lighter to it, which makes it regurgitate what's in its system. You scare it. So your chances just go up higher. And so, like I said, I didn't really start seeing symptoms until about a year or two later. And Lyme disease, especially in juveniles, really loves to affect the brain and the gut. And like anything else, it likes to really hit the weakest link. And for me, with my celiac gene, I think already being, triggered, already kind of living in a moldy house. So there was, and a lot of trauma, right? So there was, it was no wonder that I ended up, like I said, in the psych ward 2 years later with my first suicide attempt. And then that was also, another experience with the medical system of let's throw band-aids at symptoms, right? Nobody was trying to figure out why this 15-year-old was trying to off herself. They called me attention seeking. They told me that it was all in my head. They every kind of antidepressant, antipsychotic, mood stabilizer, patted me on the head and sent me back out the door. So I love actually talking to mental health practitioners more, and doing those kind of talks, because if somebody would have looked or, thought about Lyme disease back then, or mold toxicity, or, autoimmune, or the early childhood trauma, like how differently, 27 years. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, I have been in pain and sick more of my lifetime than not. Like I can't, it's kind of nuts. But yeah.
It makes me want to ask you like 10 other questions. Let me go back to, well, first saying I'm sorry that you suffered for so long, but I'm very thankful that you're now using, like you're saying, your pain to purpose, using your story to spread the word and just wanting to plant the seeds. So if anyone can hear one of the jokes you say about something, right, that might for them be that aha moment that they need to explore something like a chronic infection or whatnot that could be contributing to their symptoms. So let me go back to, for our listeners, I like that you said there's a right and a wrong way to remove a tick. Because I, even growing up, going to my grandparents on the farm, they would always take a match usually to the tick to try to, get it to
And
pull
it's
its head
back
out. But it
out.
sounds
Yep.
like that's not the right approach. So tell our listeners the appropriate way to remove a tick.
They actually make like special tick tweezers that you can get online, and little kits. That comes with like a little alcohol pad. So after you get it out, you kind of wipe the area down with alcohol, kind of disinfect it. But if you just get it as, your tweezers as close as you can to the skin, and pull straight up, make sure that you try to get everything to come out with it. And then disinfect it, and then save your tick, because you can send it, to a little
Yes.
town right next door to me in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's called Tickology, and they will test it. And then that way, if it comes back positive for Lyme and this co-infections, then you really want to get started on something. A lot of times people will just get started. And there's some good herbals too for the acute situation if you don't want to go the antibiotics. I like herbals for long-term chronic stuff, and I prefer, if it was me, I would use the antibiotics, if I knew, if I presented with a bullseye rash, or
Mhm.
if I just knew that the tick was carrying it. Like I said, I'd rather take my chances, 8 weeks, work on rebuilding my gut, because we know we can,
Yes.
than to deal with chronic Lyme.
Oh, agreed. And there's a couple different labs that will test your ticks. One might even be like ticktest.com or something. So I'll make sure I put those links in the show notes for the listeners. So you've mentioned some of your symptoms. So not to bring up all of your suffering again, but
Oh,
take me back to then what your symptoms were and the chronic pain that you've kind of mentioned, kind of what those symptoms progressed to be. And then obviously we want to get to how you got better, but tell us more about the symptoms you were experiencing with Lyme.
yeah, Lyme can be a tough one to diagnose, because it's called the great mimicker, because it's a spiral-shaped bacteria related to the syphilis family. So again, if you know what the symptoms of syphilis were, people would go mad. So it's a lot of brain inflammation coming along with this thing. It likes to eat collagen, so it likes to set up shop in joints. That's why so much joint pain. But it can show up as looks like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, pain in the joints. One telltale sign is migrating pain. There's only six diseases in the disease category that actually has migrating pain. So if you've got one day, your right shoulder hurts, the next day it's your left elbow. No, you're not a hypochondriac. It could be Lyme disease, right? So, digestive issues, fatigue, God, there's like no word in the English language to describe the level of fatigue that goes on when you had Lyme in your body for so long, that and mold. Um, so yeah, for me, it was a lot of pain. It was a lot of gut
Sure.
stuff, a lot of brain inflammation. Statistically, people with Lyme disease die more from suicide than like the actual disease itself, because it just all the brain inflammation that it causes. And then you can't rationalize with somebody when their brain is inflamed. Like that's
Right.
one of the jokes that I have is, I want to start a new movement. I want to stop calling people crazy. Instead, I want to say your brain inflammation is showing, right? Like, because once you slap somebody with that crazy stigma, it's really really hard to wash off. And I am anything but crazy. My brain was definitely inflamed though.
Yep. You mentioned that you also had exposure to mold growing up. And I know recently, because I follow you on social media, you had recent exposure to mold too. So tell us a little bit about your history of mold exposure and then kind of the differences, at least even in your personal experience, with the symptoms you get when you're exposed to mold kind of versus Lyme.
Gotcha. Yeah, so man, if you've got the genetics that sets you up to be more susceptible to something like mold, you're going to be more susceptible to Lyme. And that's why a lot of times we see the two kind of go hand in hand. I always say it's never just Lyme. Usually you will always have Lyme and some sort of other co-infection, virus, bacteria, parasite, heavy metals, and or mold. So Lyme never comes typically by itself. Mold in me, like I said, I have the crappy genes. People talk about a detox bucket. I have a detox thimble. So the canary in the coal mine. If there's a problem, if there's an issue somewhere, I will find it. Luckily, it only took me 2 months this last time. It was a AC unit, window AC unit that I had. And there were some signs that kind of started peaking up, but like I say, on a regular basis, no matter how common a symptom may be, it is never normal, right? It's always your body's check engine light coming on. But I think in the back of my head, I knew it was mold, but I didn't want to open up that Pandora's box in my home because I knew that's where it would have been because it can get expensive and devastating and leave everything behind type of stuff. I got lucky where I turned it on one day and I was standing right in front of it and I could smell it and my alarm bells started going off in my head. My ears started to ring and I was just like, I told my husband, I'm like, take that thing out of the window right now. And it just spilled water all over the place. And I was like, oh, okay, there's the culprit. So then I've spent the last 2 months just detoxing like a mofo. And luckily, like just within the past couple of weeks, starting to get my brain back. But, symptoms for me, were overreactive. Like I was starting with fights with my husband like every other day. I was starting fights with people on Facebook and social media. Like it was ridiculous the Karen that I had turned into. I was just reactive, reactive, reactive. Brain fog, again, exhausted, started gaining weight again, and I didn't know why. Bloody noses, a lot of one of the differences that I can tell with mold compared to Lyme is that a lot of respiratory stuff, right? Sinus infections, asthma, coughing, bronchitis, that type of stuff. And then just this weird melty down sense of hopelessness, of just depression, like a deep, deep depression. It's hard to explain, but mold really messes with your system, messes with your brain, messes with your
Yeah.
nervous system, right? Fight and flight. That was the other symptom that that should have been my telltale sign. When my husband walks up the stairs, if I have a normal reaction to him walking up the stairs, I'm okay. If he starts making me go, "What?" And he just walks into a room and I flip out like that, like that's a telltale sign that my nervous system is overreactive and I need
Yep.
to find out why.
More hypervigilant. Those are all
Yep.
great tips because everyone is affected differently, and mold can impact multiple organ systems.
Mhm.
It can impact clotting. So I like that you brought that up because patients who are more prone to bleeding and bloody noses, that can be a telltale sign of mold. And I like how you're mentioning, I mean, I say the same thing to my patients that Lyme is never just like the only thing a patient has, meaning many times there's something else like the toxicities. When that bucket, or you're saying your thimble, was already full. Yeah. When your body's already fighting off, trying to eliminate toxins, then the immune system can't function the way that it's supposed to. So for many of my patients who have chronic infections, we have to get rid of mold first. We lessen the toxic burden, right? We dump out the bucket or the thimble, right? Try to of toxins. And then hopefully the immune system can deal with the chronic infections. But you're right, those go hand in hand just very commonly. So, why do you think Lyme and mold are so hard to diagnose?
Hmm. I think it's because it is a great mimicker, right? There are, it shows up in so many different ways and so many different people. Like I said, if you've got weak links in your genetics, that's usually where it's gonna pop off first. So in one person, it could be a lot heavy joint stuff, and another person, it's a lot of cognitive stuff. So I think that's one thing. And then, doctors are still just really quite ignorant of how bad of an epidemic mold is. I mean, if you think they say over 50% of buildings are water damaged, right? Like wrap your brain around that. When we took lead out of paint, you know why lead was in paint? It was to keep the mold down. And we took lead out. Great. We don't need to have lead in our paint. But now, right, what's keeping the mold at bay? And we're building these homes in mold's, favorite, dish. It's like an all you can eat buffet. Add a little water, poof, you've got the perfect storm. And then you have somebody with genetics like myself. And it's just, there's just, yeah. Um, So the fact, if I had a dime too for every time I heard, "Oh, my doctor said Lyme doesn't exist here. My doctor said Lyme doesn't exist here." I could retire very, very rich. Every single state I've worked with somebody, and they've all said that their doctors have dismissed them, that Lyme doesn't exist there. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it's just getting rid of these old paradigm stories
Mhm.
that one, you have to have a bullseye rash, two, Lyme doesn't exist there. Three, the tick has to be attached for a certain amount of time. All these things we're starting to debunk so that people can actually get the help that they need because there are way too many. When I go listing off all the things that I have, it sounds like a lot, but when it comes to like this world, it really isn't. It's very common. Like I'm not special in any way, shape, or form. Like everybody I work with has got like cavitation, sleep apnea, mold toxicity, autoimmune disease, heavy metals, you know, um, Lyme and mold. So that was me.
A lot going on. So, how did you get the help that you needed? So, who did figure out that you had Lyme disease? So, tell me kind of what testing you had done, how it was determined you had Lyme, and we'll get into some of your treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was funny. I was having another really down moment, and my psychologist friend was like, "You need to go see this doctor in Denver." I can't remember where the hell she was from. She had a really cool accent, but I'm like, "Okay, fine." This was again 27 years undiagnosed. I'm like, no one's going to be able to help me. So I go, and 5 minutes after being there, she gets a little twinkle in her eye, and she goes, "I know exactly what's wrong with you." And I'm like, "Bullshit, crazy lady!" Like, and she goes, "Have you ever been bit by a tick?" And I was like, "Yeah, when I was 13. Why?" And she goes, "I think you have Lyme disease." And I was just like, holy shit. And they did a Western blot on me, which of course came back negative because once you have it in your system for that long, those tests are absolute BS. I did in the meanwhile go and get dark field microscopy or live blood analysis done, which actually showed the Lyme disease. It was quite fascinating. They're like, "Oh, you see that little guy swimming along there? There's Lyme." Um, So I finally got diagnosed. I went the traditional route, thought they were going to kill me because again, nobody was asked. Still wasn't pooping, right? Remember the beginning of the story? I was born full of shit. I still wasn't pooping. My stress level was off the chart. I wasn't eating a good diet. I wasn't sleeping, but my doctor never asked me about any of those things. All he did was go to war with a body that hadn't been working properly in 30 years. So I thought I was going to die. And that's when on a podcast, I heard the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, FDN, Reed Davis, speaking with Sean Croxton about, you got to make sure your detox pathways are open and you got to make sure your gut is healed and your hormones are balanced. And like I said, I was a silly hairstylist at the time. Another very toxic job, that just added to my poor toxic bucket. And I was a smoker. Whew. Anywho, but and it just, intuitively, I was like, oh my God, that's what I need to do. And I did. And I could say that the rest is history. There was a few more layers to peel back. I had to learn somatic experiencing work and breath work and mindfulness because that was the last piece for me to work on. Because even in the functional world, we're really great at taking supplements and changing our diet and getting to bed on time. But nobody was talking about the mental, emotional components of healing, right? And so had to add that to my repertoire. And I put Lyme into remission like 4 years ago. Uh, the only things that I'm dealing with now is, like I said, had to re-detox from mold. And I've gained some weight over the past year from mold and menopause. I'm in moldy menopause, which is like a double whammy for that. But actually, do you know who Dr. Tina is?
No, Tina, no. What last name? What's the last name?
Oh, geez, I wish I could remember. It's just Dr. Tina with a Y, but she was on Dr. Hyman and with Casey Means
Yeah,
talking
wow.
about Ozempic and how actually if you microdose these things in somebody who is metabolically broken, that it can actually heal a lot of these things without all the horrible side effects. So, I am the perfect candidate because a lot of those things aren't, they're not supposed to be magic bullets. They're supposed to be
Right.
tools in a toolbox after you put in lifestyle, right? I am the ultimate lifestyle person. I absolutely practice what I preach. And I'm still struggling with the weight. I'm still struggling with some pain, with some plantar fasciitis. I'm still struggling with a little bit of brain stuff and energy stuff. And so I'm adding this little tool. I just this is my third week on it. I haven't seen any changes yet, except for I have noticed some increased cognitive stuff,
Oh,
which has been
good.
amazing. I was like, yes, I'm getting my brain back. But yeah, I feel like I went off on a tangent there.
No, that's all right. We microdose GLP-1s in our practice as well. I think they're highly overdosed. We only really need low doses in most patients to see really good results. So excited for you. So
Yay.
let me go back to how you did get your Lyme into remission. So did you go the antibiotic route? Did you do the herbal route? What what treatment pearls were really helpful for you along the way? I mean, obviously you're working not just on the taking the supplement route. I hear that, but I do want to hear what you did take from an antimicrobial standpoint.
That's what I was just gonna say. I'm like, first it was foundation.
Yeah.
It was amazing that just actually doing the FDN stuff within 3 months, like I was a completely different person in 3 months. Yes, I had done antibiotics. I had done IV silver. I've done ozone. I've done herbals. But I didn't need a whole lot. And actually, I don't think a lot of those really helped.
Hmm.
I've done bioenergetics. Like right now, this is a Nikki, so it's off right now, but it delivers frequencies through red light. Oh yeah, so right now I've got it detoxing mold. It's got a Lyme protocol. This little booger really helped move the needle. I was shocked after putting it into remission for so many years. They gave one to me to try out, and I was like, I ain't nothing's gonna happen. I hit Lyme, and about the third day, I was starting to have a Herx response, and I was like, holy shit,
Wow.
I'm herxing from this thing. So
What's your other one? Is that an Apollo or
this
what's
is
the
an
other one?
Apollo, yeah.
Apollo? Yeah, I was
Yeah.
been thinking about getting one of those. What's this
Oh
one?
my
A
God.
Nikki? Nikki?
Nikki. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know about that at all. The Nikki.
I'll send you the info for it. But yeah, it's this these two things were huge game changers, especially in this last mold, because this has got a detox feature. It's also got a mold feature. And then this for helping calm my nervous system back down. Like I said, I was so reactive. And I'm actually seeing it with my Rincon. Like normally my normal stress level is in the 50s, and lately I've gotten it down to low 40s and at night in the 30s, which is like unheard of for me. So this has really been making a huge difference in how freaking easy it is. You put it on and you can even set a calendar schedule on your phone. You don't even have to think about it. So you can just set it and forget it.
So, listener, she's now talking about the Apollo, the thing on her other hand. Yeah. I've been
I'm
meaning
such
to
a
get one of
I'm
those.
such
I
a
need to calm my
biohacking
nervous
dork.
system. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. You got something on both sides.
And
Yes.
I've got my EMF rocks here to help with the stuff, as I'm on this. And then I've got my ring. Yeah. I'm a I am a huge biohacker, but like I said, I came into this world with a lot of deficiencies. And
Yeah.
I didn't the cards were massively stacked against me. And that's one thing I love about biohacking tools is they kind of help, give me the edge, right? That I didn't get from Mother Nature.
So, you kind of have already answered this, but I wanted to ask you why you think many treatments fail. I mean, I think the short end of it is that it's not as simple as just take antibiotics. There's a million things, right, that you could be doing that you still are doing to maintain your health. But do you have a better answer to that? Like why conventional treatments many times fail?
Oh yeah, I did a whole webinar with that exact title. One, because they're focused on treatments only. Period. End of story. So again, like with my doctor who originally was just throwing napalm at a body, if you don't get those detox pathways open, if you don't balance those hormones, if you're not dialing in sleep, if you're still eating McDonald's and drinking Starbucks, the best treatment protocol in the world is not going to help you. So it's dialing in that lifestyle mindset, the nervous system resetting. A lot of times it's chasing the wrong thing, So I have like this 600 question intake form that I do on people. It saves them a couple $1,000s in lab tests, but it really helps me tease out, is it mold? Is it Lyme? Is it parasites? Is it heavy metals? Right? Because if you're chasing one critter, and so I've talked to people, I've had clients that are like, yeah, my last person had me on the same protocol for a year. Man, if you're not moving the needle, I would say within 3 months is the max you should go. Usually you can start getting people relief within a month. But if
Sure.
you're not getting something in 3 months, like you need to re-talk to your person and be like, hey, I think we need a new approach. We need a new strategy because I really don't think, staying on something for a year that's not working is beneficial. But that's typically the reason why treatments fail is one, they're chasing the wrong monster, or B, they're not taking the whole person into account and lifestyle and dialing in those foundations.
Take me back to opening detox pathways. That is really important. Can we spend a little bit of time
I
on
love
that?
detox.
So tell our listeners, I mean, we could do a whole webinar or podcast on that, but like give us some of your top tips for helping patients kind of make sure their detox pathways are open. Kind of back to maybe I should ask, how are you pooping now, Heather?
I poop like a rock star every morning. I'm like, yeah. Takes everything I have now to take a picture and post it. I'm like, yeah. Yeah. I'm like, that's perfect because you get the Bristol Myers stool chart, right? Where it shows you. And so when I get a nice one that looks perfect, I just want to post it, but that wouldn't be appreciated by very many. But so this goes back to why treatments fail too, is that a lot of times then they treat and then they go back to their original lifestyle and then they relapse. And so now that I know this about my genes, I know that I always have to live a certain way in order to keep these things in remission. Like I have a saying that says, my self-care sometimes feels like a part-time job, but it's better than being
Mm,
full-time sick. Right?
that's a good line. Yeah.
Right? I was shocked when that one downloaded. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. But my some of my favorites are, red light sauna, skin brushing, castor oil packs, coffee enemas, are some of my favorite, all-time favorite, oil pulling. Um, because like I said, I know in my genes that I'm more susceptible to having those issues, binders. So I
Mhm.
really, really, really love to keep, so I'm in my sauna at least 3 times a week. And then I try to stack it, so before I get in the sauna, I take a binder a half hour before, I'll do the skin brushing, and then I get in the sauna. So that way it just kind of supercharges it. I still do a coffee enema once a week, and typically the night before I'll try to do a castor oil pack. So just really setting the liver up for a good detox. Um, and it's just, like I said, it's just kind of a part of my way of life. Slowing down, making sure I'm getting my meditation in every day, working and doing the somatic work. So that way my nervous system is more resilient, so that it can
Mhm.
handle these certain things. I'm digging deeper into more bioenergetics, quantum healing type stuff, because I have seen a few practitioners who say that they're more resilient towards mold and some of these other things once they've, healed at a more mental, emotional, spiritual level. That totally makes sense to me. Like I said, not an area that I have diving in too deep yet. I mean, I have, but I haven't. I've done some plant medicine, journeys with it, and it's definitely an ongoing thing with the amount of trauma that I grew up with. I think it might be another 10 years before I can completely unload that bucket, but it's, a work in progress.
Again, that triggers more questions. Binders. What are your favorite binders?
I am a huge Cellcore fan. And these days I've been using Cyto Detox and True Carbon. Oh, geez. TCC. It's from the same company, Revolution Health, Dr.
Sure,
Pompa,
sure.
Warren Phillips. Those ones have been, because I was using the Cellcore to begin with, and I just didn't feel like they were strong enough. And so I've been using the Cyto Detox and the True Carbon Cleanse, that's what it is, together. And that was a very fast and powerful. Like within a week and a half, I started getting my brain back.
Good. Take me back to trauma. I mean, you've done so much for healing. Like you say, it literally is like a full-time job. So have you done specific trauma therapy? If there are listeners who say, I can resonate with Heather, I've gone through a crap myself, and now they're hearing, oh my gosh, I need to address some of that trauma because it isn't setting them up for success. And maybe they also didn't win the genetic lottery. What is some of your best advice for kind of dealing with the trauma?
Yeah, so finding something that's going to work for you, because there's so many awesome things out there. EMDR, there's plant medicine, there's somatic experiencing work, breath work. There's not, I would stay away from talk therapy. They're actually starting to find that talk therapy kind of keeps you triggered into that fight or flight and doesn't really help move through it. Like obviously sometimes, it's great to have somebody hold a bucket and blah, 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 get validated, be seen. For me, I was in therapy for like 20 freaking years, and I had more luck when I was doing ayahuasca and shrooms, uh, low dose ketamine therapy, which you can get online these days. Like that's been amazing. The breath work though is free. The somatic experiencing tools are free once you learn them, right? And usually only takes seconds. And just being mindful and present, where is my nervous system at right now? Am I all wound up? Like I could probably take a nice, box breath, and kind of calm things down. Or I could do a VU with a push away and calm things down.
Well, now I want to ask you about ayahuasca and shrooms. So you're gonna have to tell me the short version of that.
Oh my
Well, you don't
God.
have to do anything. If you would like to
No,
share
no, no. Are you kidding?
about
I love this shit. Are you kidding? No, no, no. I'm an open book, girl. You ask me whatever. My comedy, I'm talking about, I try to bridge the gap of early childhood trauma, how I ended up on a stripper pole, right? And then how I ended up being sick for so many years. Like I'm always trying to bridge that gap. So then maybe too, next time you see a stripper, you can show a little bit more compassion because the daddy issues and the trauma is why
and
she's
the
there.
brain inflammation. Exactly.
Exactly. No woman in her right mind is doing shit like that. Um, sorry, I
So
digress.
back to ayahuasca. Yeah. So tell
Yes.
me where
So
you did
it
that.
was
And yeah.
hilarious. I asked the universe, what's my next step? Because I had relapsed back in 2020 and I was sick again. My husband's like, I'm not going to stay married to an angry person. I don't know what the hell's going on with you. We got to figure this out. I asked the universe, what's my next step? What am I missing? And all of a sudden, the book, The Body Keeps Scores, falls in my lap. Really heavy, hard to read, but
Mhm.
beautiful at the same time. And really, talked about all these different methods, neurofeedback and then so like I don't know how to I don't know how to tiptoe into anything. I only know how to dive head first. And so 2 weeks later from reading that book, I was at my first ayahuasca ceremony where little dumbass me decided I'm gonna ask to heal the women lineage on my side of the family when there's been a shit ton of trauma. Like I processed 40 some years of mother issues in one night. Like I thought I was going to die. It was the most intense thing I've ever been through in my life. And it just helped started to break me open in ways that I was never able to, access certain
Yeah.
areas of me. And then each shroom journey, I had one where I spent 4 hours sitting on the floor in the hallway of my house. If you would have picked up all the tissues that were around me and weighed them, it would have weighed 2 pounds full of just snot and tears because it's just so much pain.
And great. Yeah, you're grieving. Yeah.
So much pain, from I still I don't I am I'm a orphan basically. I don't speak to anybody in my family anymore because they're still such toxic bullies that all they want to do is tear me down and I'm trying to live my best joyful life and if you can't fucking be happy for me then you do not belong in my life. Like and it's hard though to make those boundaries and that's a lot of times what those of us have to do and that's kind of why we were put on this path is to learn those boundaries and set those boundaries and God bless you for coming into this lifetime with me to put me through what I needed to go through to learn what I needed to be but at the same time I'm still human in it and it hurts not having a I didn't have a blueprint on what unconditional love looked like or support in any way shape or form. I had abuse, trauma, neglect, from a very early age. And they say from, age 0 to 7 is when we're our most impressionable, when we're like in a dreamlight hypnotic state, so it's taken many years to undo the faulty uh, programming I came into this world with.
You've worked hard at it. And I hope that's hope to the listeners that regardless of what they have been through, what they've come from, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Not that they don't have to do the work. You have freaking put in the work, but
Oh, absolutely
yeah, yeah,
110%.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
still do all the friggin'
Yep.
time.
Yep.
Anytime I get triggered by something these days, I lean in, all 2 days. These days, people get triggered. Oh, don't say that or don't do that. It'll trigger me. No, we're not supposed to build insulation around ourselves. Lean into the things that trigger you. That's where your freaking gold lies. That's where your messages and your education's going to live. So many people want to avoid all the sticky, icky parts in
Mhm.
life. That's where the gold is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, with your I shouldn't say comedy history. You're literally currently working as a comedian. I've got to ask, like, what are some of the funny like jokes that you do share about the coffee enemas, or like, do you have any funny one-liners, any funny
Oh
quick
yeah,
stories you want to
so I
share?
I talk about, my kid is how, I used to feed him cereal for breakfast and hot dogs and mac and cheese for lunch. And let's not forget about those healthy goldfish snacks, for added omegas. And at the age of 2, he was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease directly correlated to his diet. And so around that age, I went back to school to become a functional practitioner. That's also when I became the health nut. We went from Cheerios and Kool-Aid to zucchini chips and coffee enemas. The best part of waking up is Folgers up your butt. No, 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 don't put Folgers up your butt. Don't put Folgers anywhere in your
That's
body. That's just
toxic coffee.
toxic. There's a
Yeah.
special coffee for that. But yeah,
Literally, listeners, there is a special clean
it is.
coffee. Well, that you should be drinking, orally, but also, yeah, if you're doing
Right.
coffee enemas, you got to make sure you have high quality stuff. Oh, that's good. That's funny. Yes, yes, yes. And you're in Colorado? Is
I
that
am.
okay? Awesome. Well, what would your best advice be? Let me flip back to like the prevention side of things. So, what's your best advice for someone to prevent Lyme, or even if we can even ask preventing mold related illnesses? What are some tips you have? You kind of already talked about appropriately removing a tick, but are there any other prevention tips?
Making sure your immune system is the strongest, more robust it can be, and that your nervous system is calmed the F down, right? So having a lower stress lifestyle, removing toxins out of your environment and out of the body, those are some of the easier wins. It pissed me off when COVID came around and they were, the vax, the vax, the vax, the vax, and talking about, health, that it was a health,
There was a preventative measure, like,
right. But
but
if it was they were talking about it being like a community health concern. And if that was the
oh,
case,
sure,
they'd actually be kicking down people's doors and looking what was in their pantry instead of giving away a Krispy Kreme every time you got the vax. Like,
I know.
so the food
It is
and
medicine, yeah,
absolutely,
or poison.
absolutely, so dialing in again those lifestyle stuff and really. Man, if you see a commercial for it, go the opposite direction because it's usually wrong. So we have to like undo this brainwashing that we've had done to us as Americans. This is a part of a balanced breakfast. Bullshit. That's diabetes in the making, right? So getting back to the foundations, getting back to the basics is typically where your resiliency is going to lie. That's why, not everybody who gets bit by a tick gets Lyme disease. Everybody's different. It
Yeah.
depends on where your immune system is at, your genetics, not to say that what happens in your genes is like the be all end all because there's epigenetics and how
Mhm.
things get expressed. So, but yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Sure. I want to go back to castor oil packs too. So how often do you use those? Are you just putting them over your liver overnight as you sleep, or how do you use those?
Yeah. I will put it a little in my mouth and I'll swish it around for 4 minutes and do an oil pull.
Mm.
I put it on my face when I go to bed at night. And then, yes, I will wear it in a pack. I have Queen of the Thrones, makes a special pack that ties with
Yeah, yep.
elastic around your waist. And so, yeah, I'll do that.
They're great. We've had her on the podcast too, Dr. Marisol, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes also. Let me go back to your bowels. So how did you get your bowels to start working? What do you think I don't know what the biggest intervention, biggest needle mover was there?
Regular coffee enemas to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
When you start FDN, that's part of the protocol is like at least 4 or 5 times a week. And I did that for a couple of months. And then now it's been, probiotics, making sure I'm getting good fiber. I put flax in my smoothies, and then I do take Cellcore's Bowel Mover, just 1 cap at night. It's
Sure.
good herbals just to kind of make sure everything is moving. And then keeping the stress level down, making sure that I'm mindful when I'm eating, right? Because people still grab food they're eating in front of their desks, they're grabbing food, eating here instead of being mindful and slow and present with their meals, which makes digestion, work properly. Making sure you're out of fight or flight so that way you're in rest and digest. And then, like I said, I still do coffee enemas once a week, just
Yep.
to help make sure that I'm not getting backed up and that everything's, getting cleared out like it's supposed to.
Sure, sure. What do you think helped you through your darkest hour? I know that's a deep question,
Mm,
but
mm, mm.
you kept pushing through because you're still here and you obviously have had several revelations and how you put it, the universe, I believe God, but the universe has kind of dropped things in your lap almost that you needed. Oh, and I want to go back to say what an FDN is because you keep mentioning FDN and the listeners are probably like, what's an FDN?
Functional diagnostic nutrition. Yes, it's a certification you can get. One of the more robust ones out there because it's one that I can actually do labs with. I can run labs. I can, certain supplement companies.
So, what are some top resources or tips that you may have? I mean, given all you've been through, I mean, you've given us a lot today, but what would some of your top resources be? Maybe they're biohacking tips,
I'm
maybe
like,
they're a
Dr.
Lyme
Gray, you want
resource.
more? No. Um, I my course, I have a Foundations of Health online course, stupid easy. There are videos to follow along. They go over diet, they go over exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. I have a bonus video on toxins. I have a 7 video series on cooking, right? Real cooking for real life. Because if you're eating a crappy inflammatory diet, all the best supplements and protocol in the world aren't going to help. And so many people looked at me like I had two heads when I told them they needed to start eating real food. And so I made these courses. And it's not just, the recipes, but it's like, why are you choosing wild caught salmon over farm raised salmon? Why are you eating at a cast
Cast
iron,
iron.
yeah, cast iron skillet over, Teflon, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and
Good
I've got
tips. So where can listeners find that course? And where can they find
R
you? Yeah.
rhbcourses.com. So Renegade Health Boss courses, rhbcourses.com. And then they put in blueprint for your people so they can get $100 off the course, which makes the course like $79.
Awesome. Looks, yeah, that is a great resource right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So where else can listeners find you? What are you on social media?
Everywhere, the Renegade Health Boss.
Where'd that come from?
I've taken all the shit and debunked it, I'm a renegade. Like I'm the one talking about all the hard stuff, bringing it out of the dark into the light and challenging the status quo because that's not where people get better.
Yeah, you go, girl. Okay. Last but not least, top longevity tip. I ask all my listeners that. If you had
I
one, you
love
have
my
to pick one.
sauna. I will never, ever, ever, never, ever live without an infrared sauna. Like it makes that much difference in my life every single day. A sauna.
Good one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yay. Anything else you want to share? We pretty much covered it.
I think that's it.
Thank you, Heather, for coming on the show today, sharing your story and providing hope to those struggling with mysterious, like you were saying, Lyme is that great mimicker, right? Those mysterious symptoms, and providing us a little laughter on along the way, which is clearly the best medicine. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yay.